Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shalema, for Ilan Chaya Baserech, and for Bastien Bas Chaya. And the Kuf Yud Beis Amar Aleph. 4 lines from the top. Bo mine Rav Dimi Rav Nachman. Dimi asked Rav Nachman, Mala nuche kada de milcha gabi kada de kimcha. What's the rule about putting a barrel with salt next to a barrel? Rashi says kimcha is the what is it called? The kusis, I think. The milchika, the milchika dip that we said, kutach, yeah, that we said is like a salty milchika dip. So the problem is that what happens if some of this milk gets into the salt and then you go and use the salt for salting your meat? It's a very practical question. Are we worried that the kutach will fall into the barrel next to it? Amalei asa. It said it's also you have to worry about. The chalomai, what about if you have vinegar nearby? Again, what if the kutach falls into the vinegar and causes it to become milchix? Amalei shari. He said that's mut. Umay shna. He asked, so what's the difference? He said, l'chitechel akura de milcha. He says, when you get me a chunk of salt, then I'll tell you. It was a way of like, I don't know, pushing him off and saying, think about it a little bit. But then it sounds like he ultimately answered him. My timer, high isa isura be'ena, high lesser isura be'ena. He said the difference between the kutach falling into the vinegar as opposed to the salt is when it falls in the salt, then you still have a piece of kutach, so it's not bottle. But when it falls into the vinegar, it dissolves into the vinegar, it would, and therefore it disappears, and it's bottle. I guess we assume something would fall in, it would be less, it would be enough to be bottle, and therefore it would not aser, even if you would use the vinegar then with milk, with meat, it would not be a problem. Again, obviously you can't do that lichatchila, but over we're talking about making a gzeira, and there's no need to make a gzeira because it will anyway be bottle. Hahu bar guzlo, there was a small chicken, a young chicken, or yeah, the nafal lekada the kimcha. It fell into a barrel of this dairy dip. Shari Rav China Breda Rava mi Pashrun Runya. Rav China was matrit. Amar Rava man chacham lemishri ki agavni lav Rav China Breda Rava mi Pashrun Runya. The only person who is qualified who's enough of a chacham to make a heter in such a case of having an actual chicken fall into a thing of dairy dip is this Rav China. Kasavar, ki amar Shmuel Maliach Hareyu Kureteach, even though this kutach is salty, so one would say maybe there were two cold things. So if you have a cold piece of meat that falls into cold milk, in theory you can just take out the meat and rinse it off and you're fine. But over here you have the presence of saltiness in the kutach. So maybe that should be aser, because Shmuel says that something that is salted as if it's being roasted. So that's only where it's enough salt that it's inedible because of the amount of salt. But kutach is something that's edible. It's a dip. It's something that people eat. They dip their bread into it. So since that's edible, that's not a level of saltiness that would cause the transfer of the tam of the milk or the kutach into the meat and vice versa. This that we said that it's not a problem if you have this saltiness, that's only where the chicken is raw. Avotzli boy klifa. If it was roasted, then it softens it a little bit, and then it absorbs on the outside. So it's not enough to just rinse it off. You have to take off the outer layer. You have to peel off the outer layer of the chicken. The ispe pili But if it's roasted and it falls into the kutach and it has cracks in the surface of the, you roasted it and there are now cracks in the surface of the chicken, kule aser. Then the whole thing is aser. The mittel betavlin kule aser. Another thing that will aser is also if it was spiced, the spice also softens it up, and then the milk will get absorbed into the chicken. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Kika shechatach aleh basar. Rav Nachman said b'shem Shmuel. Let's see a lot of the next like blot is pretty much all. Most of it is saying different chumras of Shmuel. So he says a kicher shekatach aleh basar. If someone had a piece of meat that was already roasted, that it had not been salted, but it just was roasted. So theoretically, the dam came out, but if you cut that piece of meat over a bread, and then some liquid comes out when you cut it, according to Shmuel, it's asa la'achla. It's asa to eat that bread because what came out might still be dam. Shmuel holds very, very chomer dika thing. He's saying that even though you roast it and you're allowed to eat that piece of meat, but he says it's still some dam that was not parish from the varim inside. So that dam is not usher as long as it stays inside. So when you cook it, it remains inside and it's not usher. But by cutting it, that causes that little bit of dam to come out and go on the bread and asa the bread because of dam. So v'hani mili the asmik. That's only where the asmik Rashi says the asmik shoya basar adam. That means that there was some bruising on the basar that caused the blood to pool there. V'hani mili the avraya, and that's only where it goes all the way through the bread. But if it's only a little bit in the bread, you could cut off that part. V'hani mili asmachei. That's only where you have with the blood, with the liquid that's coming out of the basar is thick. Avaklishta less lamba. But if it's a thin liquid, then it's mutter. So you have a lot of caveats in this isser. Like we said, it's a very chiddush isser. It's something that's, according to Shmuel, that's cooked, that's already roasted to take out the blood, still has isser of dam in it, but it's only if you have all of these tanoim in place. Shmuel shadilei lekalve. When Shmuel had this problem that he had some bread that the liquid came out of it from a roasted meat, he would give it to his dog, because it was aser. Rav Huna yav leila shame. Rav Huna would give it to a shamish. Right? There's only basa b'chol that's aser b'ana, but dam is not aser b'ana. You can feed it to your dog. Rav Huna yav lev l'shame. Rav Huna would give it to his shamish. He wouldn't eat it himself. So if it's mutter, then he should eat it himself. It's also he shouldn't give it to a shamish. It's like Shani Rav Huna Danina Daita. Rav Huna was uncomfortable. Personally, he found it unappetizing, so that's why he gave it away. Rava Ochale, Rava would eat it. He himself would eat it. He had no problem eating this bread with the juice of the meat in it. V'karle chamar basar. He would call it the beer or the liquid, the wine that comes out of basar. So it made everything taste good. It's like gravy. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Ein menichin kli tachas basar. You can't put a kli while you're roasting the meat. If you remember, we had this discussion before about the beidugi, which was a kind of a pan to catch the fat, so you could have tallow while you're roasting the meat to take out the dam. You call it kol mara dam dumashabai, until the liquid loses its redness. So how do you know? You can't see it in the air how red it is, and then it falls into the rest of the stuff. So it's hard to see, is it red or is it clear? Mazutra mishmeder papa amar mishetala timrasai. When smoke when the meat has reached a level of roasting where it starts emitting some smoke, it's burning on the edges, then you know that the blood has gotten clear and it's no longer us. Maskef Ravashi, Vidilma Tata Mata, Eloi Mata. Maybe the part that's right over the fire, right? They had their fires underneath, not like us that we have a fancy oven. The fire was underneath and it would burn the bottom. Anyone who's made a barbecue, you know that the bottom gets done before the top of a steak. So maybe the bottom is done, but the top still has blood in it. Elam Ravashi, Leslie Tatakanta. There's no Eitzah to know that you could remove the pan and put in another pan, and then everything comes out after that point is kosher. You have to Elamishna, you're never going to know when the blood is turning to liquid. Elamishna beitarti gloli milcha. You have to put 2 rocks of salt into the beidugi after it has the mixture of fat and blood in it. Umishpaya, that salt will then absorb the blood in the mixture of fat and blood, and then you could pour out the fat because the salt will remain in the salt will attract the blood, and you'll be able to separate them afterwards. Sounds very dodgy to us, right? They're saying like halacha lemaisa that you put in the salt and then you assume all of the blood is in that salt, and there's no salt. You know that you have enough salt to absorb whatever blood is there without any shear. Does Shmuel really say that once that you could put this clear underneath once the liquid turned clear? But Amar Shmuel, Kika shechatach aleh basar asal achla. We had said before that there is blood that remains even after you fully roasted the meat. When you cut the meat on top of the bread, what comes out, it could be dam. There's still dam left in it. How could we say over here that when you're roasting the meat, there comes a point where the liquid that is coming out of it is not blood? But Shmuel had said before that the blood can come out even later, even after it's fully roasted. So Shani Hassam, the Agav Duchka the Sakina Palit said, no, it's only because you're cutting it. The force of there's always some blood left inside of the meat, which is not also because it's still dam shenivla be'varim. But when you use a knife, that will cause that dam to come out that it wouldn't otherwise. But just from the roasting, it comes a point where that blood is no longer coming out. It needs the force of the knife. Amr of Nachman, Dagim v'oifa shemolchon zemzeh. If you salted together fish together with a knife, it means a knife that it had blood in it, and you were salting it to take out the blood, asur, then the dagim will be asur. Hechidami. What's the case? Even cliche afilu oifes v'oifes nami. If you're talking about a kli that doesn't have a hole in it, that's not draining away the blood, that's usher even just v'oifes themselves. You have to salt it in a kli that will strain out the blood. But if you put it into a kli that has no holes in it, it'll even just a knife, the blood will go back into the knife. And if it has holes, afilu dagam v'oifes nami shar. Then why would dagam v'oifes be usher? The blood should drain away. It's talking about where it does have hole. Since fish have a soft outer layer, their skin is soft, it's very permeable. Kadmu palti, whatever blood is inside of them or liquids are inside of them quickly comes out, and it's no longer being piled, it's no longer emitting. Ifis kamiti, ifis have a stronger skin. Basa denaichi dog and plate the ifis. So the ifis will continue. As we said, something that's emitting cannot absorb. So, but in this case, they're not equal. They go at different rates. the dog will finish emitting whatever it's emitting and then start absorbing, while the eif will continue longer since their skins are different. The eif has a thicker skin, a stronger skin, so it takes longer for it to continue being pilot. So therefore, it will keep on putting out blood while the dog already started absorbing. V'hadar bali, and then the fish will absorb from the blood of the eifus. Rav Mari bar Rachel imlechle basar shchuta bahadi basar treifa. He he salted together shechted kosher meat that just had to have the blood removed, together with basar of a treifa, of a non-kosher, an animal that had a siman treifa and therefore was also to eat. So now you have a problem not just of dam, you have a problem of the juice. Whatever liquids come out of this basar treifa is also us. It's not just the dam. And we said dam is something that is not so easily absorbed while it's emitting. So the question is the basar shchuta also from salting together, also l'kamei de Rava, came to Rava amalei hatmeim. The pasuk says l'gabi sheretz. It says elu hatmeim lachem b'chol hasheretz kol negehem b'moisem yitmar ha'arav la'aser tziron v'roitvan v'kipa shalem. The Torah says hatmeim, an extra word to aser not just the sheretz itself, but also its juice, which is what comes out when you salt it, the right one, and what comes out when you roast it. The kippah shalahen, Rashi says that's like the pieces that come out of it when you cook it. All these things are also not just the sheretz itself. So we say the same din applies also legabe a basar treifa that was salted. So the juice that comes out is also aser, and therefore that juice will aser the basar shchuta. Why don't we just say that we know that the rule is that, according to Shmuel, something that's salted is treated as if it's being roasted, and it causes the liquids to come out. So I might say that although the dam and the tzira and the roitiv comes out, Rashi says, "Avol tziron zeyehu v'loy mitzer." He would say maybe these juices that come out of the what do you call it? Out of the treifa is not usher at all. It's like the hoofs and the horns. We've talked about this before, that there are things that could be treated like zeya, that they're liquids that have no stature as far as kashrus. They're not usher at all. So maybe this liquid that comes out from a licha that's not dam is not usher at all. Kamashmulam. So that's why we needed the pasuk legabi that we said by sheretz to tell you that the tziron is also usher. Meisvei. The Gemara asks another question that Rava said that right. So Rava is saying that it's going to aser even while it's salting. It's going to still get the tam of the juice from this treifa. Meisvei dog tar shamochu and dog tame. If you have a kosher fish that was being salted together with a non-kosher fish, mutter, it's mutter. Now, why is it mutter? Doesn't l'chayra it means that even if both of them are salted, and according to Rava, we just said that if you have a basar treifa together with basar shchuta, it does aser. So why is this dag tameh not asering the dog tar? So we're talking about he only salted the kosher one, but not the non-kosher one, and therefore there's no melach removing the juices from the non-kosher fish. In fact, the Marva, the Tani Sefer, they take out the word aval. If the tar was the one that was salted. And the tame is not salted. In that case, we say it's mutter. Mechal the Reisha b'shnei maluchim. Vaistais that the Reisha is talking about where they were both maluach, and even so, it's mutter. So Tamar Prusha Kama Farsh. It's explaining Tar Shamalcham Dog Tame Mutter Ketzach Tar Maliach V'Tame Tafel. That's the explanation of Dog Tame in Dog Tar. It's talking about where the Tame was not salted and therefore it's not emitting its non-kosher juices. Hachanami Mistaber. L'chayr it's a raya that's like this. Isak Adaitach Reisha Shnei Maluchim. If you say that the Reisha is talking about with they're both salted, Hasha Shnei Maluchim Shari Tar Maliach V'Tame Tafel Mibayit. Doesn't make any sense. Why would we have to say a din of if both of them are salted, it's tar, then certainly when it's kosher, then certainly when the tame was not salted, it's going to be tar. So tomorrow, no. Imishum halayirya. Tana sefer l'glui reisha. The loy tame reisha tar maliach v'tame tafel shnei meluchim aser. Tana sefer tar maliach v'tame tafel b'chlal the reisha shnei meluchim afilu hachi shari. It's coming to make sure you don't make exactly the mistake that we're making, that's saying that the Reisha is talking about that it's only where it's where the tame is not salted. So therefore, we explain that case is mutter, but shnei meluchen, we wanted to tell you that even shnei meluchen is also mutter. Tashma, miseifa the seif. What about the next part of the brisa? Avalam haya tame, or I don't know if it's from the brisa, Tashma miseifa the seif. Im haya tame meliach v'tar tafel. If the tame was salted and the tar was unsalted, aser. In that case, it's aser. Tame meliach v'tar tafel hud aser. It's mashma only because the tame part was meliach and the tar was not. Hashnei meluchim, but if the tar was also salted, so it's not just absorbing. The salt causes it to emit. So if it's emitting, that stops it from absorbing, and that's the reason. Then it would be mutter. So l'chayr it's a raya that it's mutter even when shnei meluchim. So Gemara, I did tana reisha tar meliach v'tamei. Tar maliach v'tamei tafel. Tananami say v'tar maliach v'tar tafel. It doesn't mean to tell you that shnei meluchim is tar. We just matched the lashon of the second statement of the brisa, but it wasn't meaning to say that shnei meluchim would be mutter. It would taka be aser, like Rava had said that if you meleach a treifa basar treifa together with basar shut. Amar Shmuel. Simin Bisra the Manach Nafkusa, 3 other dinim of Shmuel. Amar Shmuel, Eina Basa Yoitze Midei Damai, Elim Kem Malcha Yafa Yafa, or Maidicha Yafa Yafa. In order to take out all the dam from the basar, you have to first salt it and then afterwards rinse it. Itmer Ravuna Amar, Meleich Umaidiach. Ravuna said that means that you have to salt it and rinse it, and that's all it's needed. Masnisa Tana, but we have another version that says, another version says that we have a brisa that says that he has to first rinse it and then salt it and then rinse it again. You have to get off what's on the surface before you even salt the meat, to get off the physical, to soften it, to make it receptive to the salt. So it's not a machlokes, even though one says that there has to be an extra rinse before the salting. The one that says you just have to salt it and rinse it is talking about where the butcher had already done one round of rinsing before it came to the homeowner. So then all the homeowner has to do is salt it and rinse it. He used a very thick salt to salt it, and then he would brush off the salt. Because the thick salt was harder to get off. It would not enough to just rinse it. Yeah, it would stick to it unless you pushed it off beforehand. You don't have to assume that there's dam. It sounds like you don't have to salt, according to Rabbi Sharshia, certain organs that they're not considered to have dam. Tirgama are karkasha uma'aya v'hadra dekanta, on different parts of the end of the digestive system. Amar Shmuel, ein menichim basar meliach ella al gagbe klima nukov. You can't put salt in meat on a kli unless it has holes in it to drain out the blood. Rav Sheshes malach le'garma gama. Rav Sheshes would salt the meat in separate pieces. He wouldn't do more than one piece at a time. Trey my time alone. Why wouldn't he put two pieces? Mishum de parish mahayu balahai. He was worried that the blood would go out of one piece of meat and go into the other. It sounds like this was a chumrah of his. So the word chadnami parish mahagisa balahai gisa. But what's the difference if you even have one piece of meat? It could go from one side of the meat to the other. So the same way you're worried about two pieces, you should worry about one. Now, obviously, that's untenable to not be able to salt meat. Ela loishna. Elamai. This is I guess the Gemara is disagreeing with Rav Misharshi, who was saying it must be incorrect what was said b'shem Rav Misharshi. Amar Shmuel mishum Rav Chia. Hashoiva mafrakasa shel behema. If you break the neck of a behema, koydem shetetze nafsha. After you cut the simanim, so the animal is already shchuta. If you break its neck before it fully dies, harezu machbed es habasar. You cause the blood to pool in the animal, meaning that usually the animal's death throes after you cut the simanim help the blood go out. But by breaking the neck and paralyzing the animal, that stops the process of the blood pumping out. So the goizel es habrius. So someone who buys this animal, it's going to weigh 600 pounds, but really 100 pounds of it is blood that would have normally gone out. He's going to expecting a lot more meat than he's going to get. Mavliya dam be'varim, he causes the dam to stay in the ivarim. Ibaylu hachi heichi ka'amar machbad es habasa v'gaz aviris mishum dam mavliya dam be'varim holiday shabbat. Is it saying that it's all one thing? It's saying he's stealing from people because goizel es habris, he's stealing from people because he's causing the dam to remain inside the animal and therefore causing it to weigh more when he sells it. But if the person is just shechting his own animal, there's no problem. He's going to have a bigger job of getting the blood out, but there's no kashrus problem. Or do we say he causes so much dam to stay behind that it causes problems that it will aser this, that you won't be able to salt it and get out the dam? It's not clear, and therefore clearly it's something that should be avoided. Zok the Mishnah. If someone places an oif on top, which we're going to have in the next Mishnah, machlekes, about whether oif is deraisa or derabanan, someone who puts an oif together with cheese on the shulchan, he's not over and a lav. So Gemara, ha'achle oiver b'loisei say, shmamina bas oif b'chalav deraisa. It's saying that if you put it on the table, you're not over and a lav. But mashma that it's only putting on the table, that's not a problem. But if you were to eat it, you would be over on the lav. Ema hamala, so zok to Gemara, and that's a machlekes. So Gemara, ema hamala so oif magvin al shulchan ain't a boli de loisase. What the Mishnah is saying is there's no fear of coming to a lav, and therefore it's not a problem. Meaning it's even if you were to eat it, it wouldn't be a lav. So it could be even like the Manda Amar who says that oif is only derabban. Zok the Mishnah. So there are 3 isurim on basa b'chalav. You can't cook it, and when it's cooked together, you can't eat it, and it's asa b'hana. So the eating is not really relevant so much in this Mishnah. But we're talking about the other 2 things. Basa behema tahira, b'chalav behema tahira. The gold standard of basa b'chalav is from a behema, a kosher animal with another kosher animal. So you have basar of a behema that's a kosher animal, b'chalav of a behema, a domesticated animal that's tahira, asa levashal v'asa b'hana. Those are fully aser. Certainly you can't eat it, and it's also aser to cook it, and it's also bahana. Basa, it's this is the reason why we leave out achila is because then we're talking about non-kosher animals, which are anyway aser ba'achila, but there's no iser hana and no iser bishul. Basa behema tahira b'cholav behema tmeya. If you cook together the basar of a behema tahira together with the milk of a behema tmeya, non-kosher, like ostrich milk or I don't know, whatever. Basar behema tmeya b'cholav behema tahira, or the basar, the meat of a non-kosher animal with the milk of a cow, let's say, muta lavashal or muta b'hana. There's no isser of basar b'cholav of cooking or hana where either the milk or the meat was from a behema tmeya. Like it would seem to us, right? It should be worse. Not only is it cholav or basar that's mixing, but the Torah excludes it, that they're not included in the isser basar b'cholav. Obviously, they're going to be asr to eat because they're tummy. Rav Kiva Omer, chayiv ha'oif einem min ha'Torah. He says not just says this that we said a behema tmeya. It's even more than that. Even a chaya, a kosher, a deer. So the milk of a deer or the meat of a deer together with milk of a cow, or a oif, you cook chicken with milk. Einem min ha'Torah. They're not also midaraisa. They're only midirabban. Obviously, they're also midirabban. Shenemar l'savashel gedi b'chalev imay. Gimel panim. Says it 3 times. Prat l'chaya l'oif u'behemet tmeya. Says gedi 3 times. So it's come exclude a chayin, a wild kosher animal, and a oif, a kosher bird, u'behemet tmeya, and a non-kosher animal. The 2 psukim, the 2 inyanim are written next to each other. Not eating an avela and basal b'cholav. Esher also mishum nevela, also lavashal b'cholav. That which is asher als nevela has an iser to eat with cholav. Oif also mishum nevela yachal yeyasal lavashal b'cholav. I might say so that includes even a chaya, unlike Rabbi Akiva. But the oif, Rabbi Yosef Glili happens to agree with Rabbi Akiva. Maybe oif should be also. I'm sorry. He said chaya is included in the iser, unlike Rabbi Akiva. But oif, he says, is only midirabban, like Rabbi Akiva. Tamalem b'chalav ima yatsa oif she'en lechelav aim, chalav aim. Since the oif doesn't have any milk, therefore it's not included in the iser basar b'chalav. So Rabbi Akiva says chaya, oif, and behemet tmeya are excluded. Rabbi Yosef Glili says oif and behemet tmeya are excluded. There's no nevela on a behemet tmeya. So mili. Where do we know that all animals, all behemoths are included in the iser basar b'chalav? Amar B'Elazar Amakra Vayishach Yehuda es gedi ha'izim, says that Yehuda sent the gediizim. Kan gediizim hakom b'kshenem gedi stam afilu parav v'rachel b'mashma. Over here it says the Torah specifies the gedi means goats, but other places where it says gedi includes all manner of domesticated animals. In fact, why don't we say, since it says gediizim, it means every time it says gedi, it means specifically goats. It says also another place gediizim. That means, that tells you that gedi is only izim. It's going to tell you only here, but not in other places. Why don't we learn out from there as well? Since we have 2 psukim saying only over there is gedi izim, but other places gedi includes all behemoths, so therefore we can't learn out from there. Hanicha, I'm saying, let's say from both places that gedi means only izim. But since it says it twice, we can't learn out from there that gedi only means izim. So you are malamd for. So izim ha'izim. It says not just izim, it says ha'izim. That tells you that it's a restriction that you can't learn anymore. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Bez Hashem, see you tomorrow.
Yes, good day.